Welcome to the College Football Insiders. Week 4 is complete, and boy, we got a lot of hot seat chatter going on. Dabo Swinney wishing he was probably in Cabo at this moment. Luke Fickell in a pickle, and I can't rhyme with any other coaches we're going to talk about today. I'm Brendan Marcello, joined by Chris Hummer and John Talty. We're a man short today, but we're going to run this three-man weave as good as anybody else out there. A lot to chat about, gentlemen, here on the College Football Insiders. So let's just jump right into it. After an eventful week 4, let's start with Dabo Swinney and Clemson. The Clemson Tigers just getting demolished by Syracuse, 34-10. We knew Clemson had some issues, obviously, offensively, defensively a little bit, but mostly offensively. But Syracuse, with the top-rated pass offense in the country, comes in, throws up a lot of yards. Heck, Steve Angeli ends up getting injured that game, but they still go in there and pull off this huge, gigantic win. Clemson 1-3 for the first time ever under Dabo. What the heck is going on at Clemson? Hummer, this is a team, if I recall correctly, you thought could win the national championship this year.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm gonna eat that one. I am still flabbergasted thinking about Clemson. It's a situation that makes no sense on paper. I was texting with Blake Rockermeyer, a former first-round draft pick, a CBS employee who handles a lot of our like scheme evaluation stuff and breakdowns of teams yesterday. His son plays at Miami, had a much better result for the Hurricanes yesterday than Clemson did. And I was just like, can you explain what the hell is wrong with this Clemson defensive front? And he was like, I have no idea. They're so talented. They should not be this bad. And that's the only thing I come out of this game thinking. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, this is a Clemson, like, we'll talk about both lines of scrimmage, but this is a Clemson defensive front that has multiple future draft picks, or at least they did going into the season. I don't know if that holds up to this point. And I think they're 107th in pressure rate created. Offensively, the offensive line, which I thought would be maybe a bit of an issue this year, ranks 123rd in pressure rate allowed. Yeah. So that's the first place I go to. But like, can't run the ball. Like, the secondary isn't stopping anybody. It feels like the run fits are horrible. This Clemson team keeps making mistakes, like bad mistakes, like hitting people late out of bounds and roughing the passers to extend drives. And I don't want to say it's like a comedy of errors, but it just feels like so many things at once it's going wrong for Clemson football. It's kind of unexplainable when you think of how much talent's on this roster.
Yeah, let's put it in context here. I don't think anybody's going to say on this show that Dabo Swinney's going to get fired or anything like that. He's done way too much at Clemson, and obviously they just won an ACC championship last year when a lot of people, including me, thought the program may not get there last season. But, you know, his buyout, we'll say it now, is $60 million at this moment. And John, you know, Clemson's not a program that's like hurting for cash. It's not a cash issue. They got a lot of cash. In fact, when we just talk about revenue sharing, they're sharing 85 to 86% of their entire budget there for the revenue share to the football program. NIL is a situation there at Clemson where they like to give the money and reward players who perform well. So sophomores, juniors, and seniors more so than incoming freshmen. And a lot of these guys who are struggling are the upperclassmen. They returned a lot of production from last season. I mean, Hummer hit on it. This is just completely baffling. But, like, is there a common theme in all of this? Is it just Dabo? Is it the portal? Is reluctance with the portal? Like, can we define this? You're muted.
There we go.
I don't want to say anything. There you go.
I don't think it's a talent issue, to Chris's point. I think that you look up and down the talent, there is quite a bit of NFL talent. It's why so many people like them to compete for a playoff spot this year. So I think some of the, like, Dabo's not evolving, not adapting, like, it's easy to say that, but like, I don't think it's purely if he just got this piece out of the portal, everything would be better. Certainly they should have maybe been more aggressive about getting a running back and some offensive linemen. But to me, when you look up and down, when you can't really explain it, that's when it comes back to, feels like there's some effort issues out there. Watching them against Syracuse, it did not feel like they were the better coach team. I think Syracuse certainly looked better in a lot of ways there. So and I want to be careful here. I don't want to get aggregated for saying something, but like, I don't want to say like Dabo's lost the locker room or anything like that, but when you've been at a school for so long and you have a certain style of doing things, like when it starts to not go well, or guys starting to tune you out, or they're not maybe as invested as they've been in the past, there's just something that feels very off about this program right now. And I think the thing that's concerning, and I said this a week ago, is that I don't see a lot of obvious fixes. Like, it's not, again, purely a talent issue. They have gone out and spent a lot of money on a new defensive coordinator, Tom Allen. That hasn't worked out so far. They went out and got Garrett Riley a couple years ago, spent a lot of money doing that. Dabo is as defensive as ever. And so it doesn't seem like he's going to make major changes internally based on what he's saying publicly. So I think that's where we've written about it. Like, it feels like they're entering into kind of a purgatory type period where you're not going to get rid of him, but he's not really going to change, and you're just going to get stuck. And that's why I think the Clemson fans that I was texting with yesterday, like, they're pretty frustrated right now.
I mean, this is exactly the type of situation that Nick Saban never wanted to get in.
Right.
And wanted to, I think that's why he left, because he knew that could potentially happen to him because of the new era and things changing, the attitude of the players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I ask you all a quick question that I've thought a little bit about, given Dabo Swinney and Mike Gundy, who I know we're going to get to in a little bit? Like, and I've always wondered this in college football. How much do y'all think is owed a head coach who's done so much for a program to establish it when they start to slip at the end? It's the old Bobby Bowden question, I suppose, from like 20 years ago. And we've seen the situation happen numerous times in college football. I'm just curious how both of y'all think about that. Because, like, for Dabo, like, the slide isn't that significant until this year. He won an ACC championship last year. I think he's won 9+ games every year since 2011. Mm-hmm. But for somebody like Mike Gundy, like, who I know we're going to talk more about in a little bit, the slip is more precipitous. So I'm curious how the two of y'all think about that issue.
I think what's interesting about Dabo and other coaches, including Mike Gundy and even Bobby Bowden to a certain extent, is that they rationalize the slide because of what they've done in the past. So for the longest time, Dabo's like, we've won 10 games or more in this many seasons. And then you get down to 9. It's like, we've won 9 more games each season. Like, it's just, you keep moving the goalpost because you feel like you're allowed to do that because, hey, I won a championship here 10 years ago. Rarely do you see a coach in a position like Dabo Swinney or a Mike Gundy who has won in the past admit to failures in their future because they don't want to let go of all that. I think it's so rare these days, one, for coaches just to be outward and open about things, but especially the old school coaches who have been somewhere for a while and they are so intertwined and obsessed with their legacy. They are all obsessed with their legacy. Some are smart enough, like a Nick Saban, to step away when you're pretty much on top and before that slide starts to potentially happen. Not saying Saban would have slipped completely, but you saw the little chinks in the armor, right? Dabo and Mike Gundy are the perfect examples of guys who I don't think will ever let go voluntarily. They will have to be forced out either through a retirement or something like that. And I think the question for Dabo is not necessarily, should I step away this year, but how many more times can I just keep being combative whenever people ask me about very glaring, obvious weaknesses in myself as a coach and as a development of players and also in the recruiting realm?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Brandon's point earlier, I remember talking to someone who was, I think, on that last staff with Saban, who said that Saban specifically said he didn't want to pull Bobby Bowden. So he was very aware of that, of staying too long. And I think you could argue might have left. I mean, they were a play or two away from being in the national championship game. So he left at a high note. That's always what he said. It was like, I don't want to leave the program at a lower level. You know, I want to leave it in a good place. And, you know, you can see, we talked about Bama at another time about where it stands, but he left a lot of talent there at minimum. And so I think it's really hard. I can remember a similar situation like David Cutcliffe at Duke, like took over probably one of the worst programs in America. He has a couple down years and he gets forced out. And I think he was very hurt by that. He felt like he should have been given a little bit more grace. And so it's such a hard thing, to Brandon's point. Like, there's ego involved, there's legacy, I've given everything to this place, I deserve a little extra time. But it's tough. And, you know, you hope that people will gracefully leave. I mean, our great friend Dennis Dodd still had his fastball and he left. You know, we didn't have to like kick him out because he was, you know, spelling Nick Saban's name wrong in stories, right? Like, he knew, all right, I can leave when I'm still doing a good job. You hope that people do that, but unfortunately, a lot of them want to hang on, and it kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Like, I'm going to be thinking about how bad this Oklahoma State team is and not necessarily the highlights of the Mike Gundy era.
There's not a lot of Jerry Seinfelds and Ted Lassos out there. You step away when they're on top. All right,
is coming back, Brandon. Don't you worry. Like that cat check cleared from Apple. Jason Sudeikis is back.
Yeah, it's coming back, but is it going to be good?
No.
All right. So
wow, y'all are just ruining my hope for a
no, because it's going to be
fine.
anyway. The show's going to be stateside, and I it's better when he's a fish out of water. Anyway, all right. Billy Napier, Florida. Is he getting fired today? Or are we in mass hysteria? Our Richard Johnson, I'm sure all of us communicating with him. It seems like things are kind of quiet for now, but it seems the inevitable is still coming. Florida entering a bye week after losing to Miami 26-7. The result's not surprising, right? In fact, they were in this game in the fourth quarter within a score, which isn't surprising again because Florida's defense has been phenomenal all season. They only allowed 3 offensive touchdowns going into that game. They got one of the better defenses in the SEC and also the country. But look at that right there. Fewest total yards in a game, 141. This offense has been struggling all year. We know that. Also, credit to Miami's defense. We've said on the show that they've got an incredible defense. You saw it in the Notre Dame game. Notre Dame's offense is explosive. Is it just a matter of time with Billy Napier, and why the holdup? Why are we not hearing Billy Napier has been fired at Florida on this Sunday morning?
I think I'll make 2 quick points here and I'll let Chris go. I think one, it's a little ironic that DJ Lagway and that offense probably saved Billy Napier a year ago and probably going to be what dooms him this year, especially with Billy not willing to give up the play calling duties. I think that was a mistake and is ultimately going to be probably what dooms him. I think the second point that I'll make is that I think at Florida, there are 2 things you got to think about. One, is there an interim coach, a viable interim coach on the coaching staff? I think people will tell you that is very much in question. They'll have to name someone, but there's not an obvious, this is the guy to step up. And
interim coach Steve Spurrier.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it. I don't know. Is Jim McElwain, does he need another job? Bring back all the old coaches.
You did it with Bob Stoops for a game. Bring in
Ed Ogeron, he's around. Let's get Ed O to interim for a couple days.
He's in Florida. He's living in Miami. He probably watched the game in person yesterday.
But the other piece of it is that, especially right now, guys can redshirt if they want to. And so I just think that it makes sense because it's a bye week. But if you say pull the plug on Billy Napier right now, and listen, we got burned a week ago talking about coaches possibly getting fired, and then they did a couple hours later. So I don't want to say anything definitively because something could happen in an hour. But it would seem to make sense to hold on another week or 2. You can maybe do it on the second bye later on in the season, just because if you fire Billy Napier today, does DJ Lagway say, I'm redshirting, I'm out of here? You start losing guys, and then it gets really, really ugly down the stretch. So there's some even just in-season reasons, I think, to hold on to Billy at this point.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to bring up, John. I think athletic directors have to sort of toe a very fine line in this era of college football with the redshirt rule and the transfer window that triggers immediately when a coach is fired. A team gets 30 days to enter the portal at that point. And if you're Scott Strickland, you really have to take those 2 things into account. And I think this is a situation in which if you just talk to people around college football, even people around Florida, like they talk about the second bye week, which is only in like 3 more games for Florida. There's not a lot of opportunity for Billy Napier to save his job in that stretch, especially when you have to play Texas and Texas A&M in back-to-back weeks. So I think that redshirt rule and that 30-day window really looms over this situation for Florida. And that's why you might not see movement as soon as maybe Florida fans want to see it.
Hummer's dog is chiming in. What's the boy saying?
He's saying I did not mention the Bulldogs of Mississippi State in terms of those 3-game stretch with Florida. And he wants to point out that the Bulldogs, who I believe are 4-0 now, have an excellent chance to win that game.
They got some dogs. Hey, by the way, I heard that clip at the OU game because OU's defensive line calls themselves the Dog Pound. And some reporter in the background, when the player said, you got some dogs. And he was like, oh, yeah, from that song. I don't know who's a rap artist that does it. And Andy Staples like, they sampled it in a rap song? It's a old YouTube video of the Coastal Carolina coach. Just shows you how old we all get over time.
Hey, by the way, I think so when you're trying to tie all these hot seat situations together, and I'm not trying to make it a holistic conversation about all of them, I think one thing you find is an unwillingness to change. for Dabo, Swinney, and Mike Gundy, that's obvious, right? But with Billy Napier, I think criticism for those people who follow Florida closely is that he hasn't given up play calling duties, and the third down offense is a problem for Florida. That's been a problem for years for Billy Napier. I think he designs it really well, but when he gets to third down, some of those obvious passing situations, Florida can struggle. And you know what Florida went on Saturday against Miami on third down? They went 0 of 13. 0 of 13.
My gosh.
And I think that stat alone, 0 of 13, kind of signifies why Billy Napier is in the position he's in. Like, it's an unwillingness to change, even though people are telling you and advising you to do so.
And the amount of times they seem to only have 10 men on the field. I know something that infuriates Florida fans. And then he just didn't have an answer for it again after the game. You're like, come on, Billy. Come on.
This happens like every 3 games.
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm not exaggerating. We need to go out and average that. I guarantee you the average is about once every 3 games, there's a substitution penalty of some sort. Too many men on the field or not enough men on the field. Usually it's special teams or the offense, rarely the defense. I don't know. Billy Napier is 20-22 overall. There at Florida. It's the 4th worst record among Florida head coaches with at least 20 games under the belt. He's 4-16 against AP ranked teams. We've got several more coaches to get to here on the Heat Check segment. A lot of hot seat chatter ramping up. But before we get to that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Make sure you like and subscribe to us here on YouTube and search for College Football Insiders wherever you get your podcast. We'll be right back to break down these hot seats.
The Rolex Sail Grand Prix is coming to Switzerland. It's the first time the 12 world-class teams have raced on Lake Geneva. For Sebastian Snyder's Swiss team, they have had their best season yet. Can his young and dynamic crew make a charge up the scoreboard? Who will conquer Lake Geneva for the first time in Sail GP?
We are back, College Football Insiders. Let's move on to Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. Boy, oh boy. Whiskey for my friends, beer for the Badgers. The Badgers are struggling. They lose 27-10 to Maryland. John Talty's Maryland Terrapins? Where the heck this come from? I did not expect this. No one expected this. Let's also mention that Wisconsin's had some issues at quarterback, injuries and all that. In fact, that popped up once again in this game. But still, you lose at home by 17 points to Maryland. Luke Fickell very much on the hot seat.
Don't say it too derisively, right? Brandon.
15-15 at Wisconsin. I mean, that schedule doesn't get easier. Is Luke on the hot seat? Are we needing to put that him in on red alert?
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is when you talk to agents this offseason about jobs they were potentially watching. Like Wisconsin was one of those jobs that popped up on the list. Yes, Luke Fickell's only in year 3. But he regressed in year 2. I think he went 5-7 last year, and it's just been ugly so far this season. And it's never a good sign when your athletic director has to give you a vote of confidence after week 4. But that's exactly what happened with Luke Fickell last night. His buyout is significant. It's $25 million, but it does drop on December 1st. And I think this is one of those situations where Wisconsin is a usually very patient program. I think they've only had 5 head coaches the last 35 years. But in this era of the Big Ten, especially with the shifting sands of the sport, you can't fall too far behind. And it does feel like Wisconsin's falling really far behind. And I'm sure John Talty's Terrapins were very happy on Saturday night, especially given that Wisconsin took Billy Edwards from Maryland. And the irony of Billy Edwards not being able to play in that game because of an injury he suffered is pretty significant. So, yeah, Luke Fickell. Some difficult circumstances, starting quarterback hurt basically in week 1, 2 years in a row, but college football comes at you quick, and there's certainly a lot of pressure on him the rest of the season. I'll put it that way.
And I think we'll go back and look at his decision to hire Phil Longo as kind of the original sin. I mean, it just, I remember I went up to Wisconsin this offseason to kind of talk about it. And I think, Fickell is certainly well aware of the pressures on him. I think even he was asked about it. I mean, there were fire Fickell chants that were pretty loud at halftime, and he got asked about it. And he's a very calm guy. I mean, he's like, I'm just as mad as anybody. And I think he understands that. But he made a big bet this offseason on Jeff Grimes and Billy Edwards. And to Chris's point, Billy has been hurt. Wisconsin has had unreal bad luck at QB. But that's an issue. And, I think with Grimes, you're seeing little pieces of them trying to get back to what they were, but it's a transition period. And their offensive line got pushed around in that game. I mean, whether it was Billy Edwards or Danny O'Neal in the back, like they were not getting a lot of time. And that's something that just like, as a Wisconsin fan, has to just infuriate you because, yeah, Wisconsin's offense wasn't always the sexiest, but like you had some big boys up front that were going to push around the defensive line. You could run the ball effectively. And that's what they talked about trying to do this offseason, but they just don't have the personnel to do it because they had Phil Longo, and Phil Longo was recruiting his guys. So it's a bad situation. The AD, I think, is in some ways tied to Fickell, and so that could be a reason why he'd want to have some patience. But you look at their schedule, and it's brutal, and I don't know really where you're going to find a lot of wins, and so I don't know if you need some moral victories to feel like you're turning the corner, but it just feels like it's going to be hard for him to show any real progress this season, and it's going to force Wisconsin to make a really tough decision at the end of the year.
Hey, real quick on Wisconsin, I want to go inside the insiders a little bit here. As you guys know, and I mean, I'm sure you guys know as listeners and viewers out there, we all have a group chat ourselves among reporters, and we're trying to put together lists just in case there is a job change, right? Wisconsin has a pretty good and interesting potential candidate pool that I think would just be great fits here if Luke Fickell were to get canned this season.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking, and who knows, maybe this will end up on CBSSports.com. But I mean, there's a bunch of guys who I think fit what they like. Jason X, one of the names who's going to get mentioned, who's doing a good job, haven't already beat UCLA. But there's just guys who seem to fit more of what they want, whether it's trying to steal Brett Bielema, which would be kind of a hilarious reunion, who says you can't go home. But, Pat Fitzgerald, I think, is a name who's going to kind of loom over this coaching search. Clearly wants to get back, has been exonerated from that situation at Northwestern. He's someone I think that you'll see his name pop up for a lot of jobs. And I know Chris has some other names that I think would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Lance Leipold obviously did a lot of great things with Wisconsin Whitewater for years. And
that's a target on my map.
Yeah, if you're going to go hire a guy who wins, like Lance Leipold's at the top of the list. Look at what he's done for Kansas. His former offensive coordinator, Andy Koltenicky, too, I think is a guy who's going to get a lot of attention this coaching cycle nationally. And I mean, he is a fit for what Wisconsin likes to do. Wisconsin's already trying to scheme towards the wide zone with Jeff Grimes. If you hire either one of those guys, you're getting a wide zone scheme coming in. It's an easy transition. But yeah, I mean, it's a very attractive job. Wisconsin's a job of stability, really. I think there are challenges in 2025 with Wisconsin that didn't exist 15 years ago. Divisions one, namely, but also it's harder to recruit at Wisconsin the way you used to. You used to be able to go and get farm boys and not have to have speed, dominate on the offensive line. But you can't do that in a conference that USC, Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State are in. It's not as easy to win with that style anymore. There's a reason why we've seen teams like Iowa essentially peak at 8 wins the last couple of years, but it's still a really, really attractive job with a lot of stability. And if things do go sideways with Luke Fickell, I think you're going to see a lot of interesting candidates.
I wonder if there'll be a push to bring back Jim Leonhard. I know there was a big push for him last time. He's in the NFL, I think, right now. But I think you can get a sitting head coach at that kind of job. I think that's the caliber of the job it is. But I know Leonhard's been a popular name with the fans in the past.
I think you can get a sitting Power 4 head coach at that job. Like if it's
really,
especially, yeah,
like Lance,
Big 12 or ACC coach making the move,
yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah. Meanwhile, speaking of the Big 12, Stillwater is oh my gosh, it's going very badly there. I was there on a Friday night, had an inkling, just a little inkling that Tulsa might beat them. I know the Tulsa coaching staff was very confident going into that game, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to OU on Saturday. Might as well just make this a double dip. Not that far away from me. So Tulsa, quote unquote, upsets double-digit favorite Oklahoma State 19-12. The Cowboys have lost 11 straight games against FBS opponents, which just seems completely unfathomable to happen under Mike Gundy. This is a guy that for the longest time, like if you wanted to win the Big 12 championship and you had Oklahoma State on your schedule, you better beat them. And if you don't beat them, you might not win the Big 12 championship. This is a program that was winning 9-10 games with relative, I don't want to say ease, but with regularity. And here we are looking at Mike Gundy just in hell to be quite honest. And again, like we talked about Dabo Swinney, after the game, he was just acting like it was business as usual. I mean, I asked him 2 different times about, like, do you feel like you should be still leading this program? Do you feel like you're going to have a job Sunday morning? And it was just, I feel good about this team. We're going to get everything together. We're going day by day, week by week. You got to remember, we had to reload this roster after what happened 2 years ago, and I go in the transfer portal. All these pieces are new. The problem is that the pieces he brought in aren't all that great anyway. And now you're relying on them immediately to come in and turn your program around. And by the way, he also revamped that staff. I think that he's done too little, too late there to kind of course correct things and solidify his legacy. Let's remember 5 years ago, there was controversy surrounding him, that there was an investigation into the program. He had to take a $1 million pay cut back then. And then back in December, they were trying to fire him then, push him out, force him out. The Board of Regents, ends up getting some support from some boosters there and able to renegotiate his contract, which he took another $1 million pay cut and agreed to a smaller buyout, shrinking from $25 million down to $15 million. And they also erased his automatic rollover clause in his contract as well. His buyout, as it stands right now, is $15 million, gentlemen, and it doesn't drop for 3 years. So you could fire him today. You could fire him 2 years from now. It's not going to make a difference in the pocketbook. But
Brandon, you didn't even mention the most interesting part of his contract. It's literally written in his contract that he's supposed to help hire his successor, identify, target, and hire.
As I wrote in my column afterward, he might just get a courtesy call. Like, hey, we're hiring so-and-so. What do you think? Cool. I think, the other thing that's muddying the situation in Stillwater is the administration is just an absolute upheaval. Chad Weiberg, their athletics director, is working without a contract at the moment. His contract expired June 30th. They have a new president who was installed back in April. There's a vacuum of power there. And we say the best years are behind a coach, but I think it's very clear that the best years are behind Mike Gundy. And we've been seeing this coming for the last 2 years, gentlemen.
Well, first, Brandon, I think your Chad Weiberg point is a very apt one. And I think you're going to see probably changes happen to that administration sooner than later. And that might determine the course of Mike Gundy's tenure, whoever ultimately gets to say over who the next football coach is.
And by the way, I wanted to mention Mike Gundy and Chad Weiberg are very close. So that's a critical component in all this too. Yep.
Yeah. And it was the board last year that tried to force Mike Gundy out. It wasn't necessarily Chad Weiberg, and Mike Gundy basically got on the phone and talked everybody down by making a couple calls to some of his powerful booster friends. And I don't know if that's going to work this time around. But I will say, it's a precipitous drop for them. I think people would be surprised to hear that Oklahoma State has played in 2 of the last 4 Big 12 championship games. This is not a situation where Oklahoma State hasn't been close. They were literally playing Texas for the Big 12 championship game at the end of the 2023 season. And then they've fallen off a cliff since. I was talking to somebody around Oklahoma State yesterday that kind of pitched the idea of having a little grace. Kind of goes back to the point we talked about earlier with what kind of leash do you give a head coach like this in this situation? And he makes so much money. He's been so outwardly stubborn about how to handle this era of college athletics. It feels like usually I would be willing to give a coach a little bit more grace in a situation like this, but I feel like your job as a $6 million a year man is to do what's best for your program, not what you think is best for college football. And it feels like Mike Gundy's been working in opposition of what makes sense in this era for a couple of years now, and it's catching up with him.
Yeah, he said the last 3 years their NIL budget was $7 million, combined. And I guess we remember a couple of weeks ago he had that little rant or whatever you want to call it about Oregon and their $40 million NIL roster, and then he had to come back and go on satellite radio and say, it's not exactly what I meant, but that's Mike Gundy for you. And you're exactly right. He's always more worried about, this is what's right in my opinion for college football, and he just has been unwilling to get with the times.
I don't see a path forward for him to be successful at this point.
Either.
I really don't. I mean, like you said, and I think that's where I would give more grace to people who show any ability to show remorse, show an ability to adapt, evolve. And I mean, I would put Mike Gundy and Dabo are probably two of the most stubborn coaches in college football. Now, I know that's actually a very high bar because a lot of coaches are stubborn, but those guys are at the top of my list. And so unless I heard Gundy really unveil a plan to me that felt like a lot of changes were going to happen, I can't get on board with giving him more grace at this point.
By the way, I will say about Oklahoma State, like, injuries happen, but I truly feel like if Haas Haney was healthy, like, that game against Tulsa would have gone a lot differently. For Oklahoma State, like, they needed him to be healthy. I could say a lot about roster construction and having a third quarterback available other than Zane Flores, but if Haas Haney does come back healthy eventually this year, and I think there's a possibility he does return midway through the year from his broken foot, like, the offense could look a lot different. But we could spend another 5 minutes on the problems with their quarterback recruiting and what that's.
Well, I'll counter with this, Chris. Tulsa started their backup quarterback.
Yep. No question.
With the first year head coach. I know. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying we can make all kinds of excuses for any team out there, but Tulsa went on the road with a backup quarterback. But also they went on the road with two former Oklahoma State players who balled out. Braylon Presley caught the first touchdown pass, and Dominic Richardson, the running back, ran all over them. 130 plus yards. They were out for blood in that game, and I'm telling you, going into it, that Tulsa staff felt very confident they're going to be able to go there and get a win. And kudos to Trey Lamb and co. By the way, Tulsa is the smallest school in the FBS. A private school enrollment is very small. It's like 5,000 people, maybe less. And they went in there and they won that football game. First time since 1951, Tulsa has won a game in Stillwater. First time since 1996, Tulsa has beaten a Big 12 team. It's downright bad in Stillwater. Let's go a little bit to the west, and right in my backyard, practically, Arkansas coach Sam Pittman. The last 2 weeks, they have lost games, thanks in part, or maybe not completely, because of fumbles late in the game, marching into the red zone to either potentially ice the game or to tie or take the lead. They did so against Ole Miss. They fumbled the ball away, lose the game. But yesterday at Memphis in the Liberty Bowl, Arkansas was up 28-10, blew the lead, looked listless offensively in the second half. Their defense has been atrocious all year. The defense gives up a lot of points. It looks like they're going to march in and kind of take the lead and put the game away in the final 2 minutes. They fumble the football. Memphis holds on to win and extend their nation-leading winning streak, by the way. I don't know if people realize that Memphis owns the longest win streak in college football right now at 8, I believe. Sam Pittman is in hot water. They've got Notre Dame coming up on the schedule this upcoming weekend in Fayetteville. I got a lot of calls yesterday on this one while I was in Norman covering Oklahoma. A lot of rumors out there. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on just the Sam Pittman situation, but I'll get deeper into that here in a moment. But what's wrong with Arkansas? I mean, I'm sure you could just say, well, that's just bad luck the last 2 games. But, I mean, losing's losing, and that's all they've been doing the last 2-3 years.
Just can never seem to get over the hump, to your point. I mean, a few things go differently, and you've got wins over Ole Miss and Arkansas, and we're like, man, Sam Pittman, coach of the year. I mean, they always seem to be right kind of on the cusp, and they just can't find a way to win, which I do think it goes to coaching. I like Sam Pittman. I think he's a fun character to have in the SEC. He seems like, a generally good dude, kind of got a job he probably never thought he was going to get, but the fan frustration is clearly elevating. And, to your point, Brandon, the second half wasn't great, but it is interesting that it feels like a lot of this is breaking in a way that's very good for Bobby Petrino, where he can point to, hey, my offense is crushing it. If I can just get a defensive coordinator in here, let me kind of run this thing back. It just feels like there's some potential there. So that's kind of what I'm watching, that if Arkansas makes a move, is that what he's selling? I mean, Brandon, you know Arkansas better than anybody, so I don't want to tell you anything you don't know. But I remember talking to some people around that situation when he got hired, and the initial reaction was they're setting him up to be the head coach in the future. And maybe that ends up how it plays out.
Just real quick. Well, I'll let Brandon cook on all things Arkansas in a second. But I would just say about Arkansas, they are now 2-10 in one-score games over the last 3 years. And I think that says everything you need to say about Sam Pittman.
Yeah, Sam Pittman, I think it's 7-19 overall in those one-score games. So it's just even dating back to when he was winning there, it wasn't all that great. Here's another interesting thing about his contract, right? His buyout drops if his career record is below 500. So really kind of the magic number has always been if he wins 5 games this year, his buyout's $9.8 million. If he loses 8, goes 4-8, it's $6.9 million. I will tell you this, talking to sources around Arkansas, buyout money doesn't matter at this point. If they feel like it's going to be the best situation, they will make a move in the middle of the season. Don't foresee that happening this week because we talk about players entering the portal. That's one issue. Redshirt players, they can decide, hey, I'm going to redshirt for the rest of the year if my coach isn't going to be here. But also, they got Notre Dame this week. Then they have a bye week. If something's going to happen midseason, it's probably going to happen here in 7-8 days. And you hit on the Bobby Petrino situation. A year ago, I'll say this. There was a lot of reluctance about Bobby Petrino taking over as interim head coach if that opportunity came to be, if Sam Pittman was fired. I was told even at the time that Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator, would most likely be the interim coach. Fast forward to now, the weakness of that team is by far the defense. There's a lot more push for maybe Petrino should be the interim head coach. And I will tell you from people I've spoken to, Bobby Petrino's been working them phones, baby. He's been talking a lot behind the scenes. He's positioning himself to take over the Arkansas football program, at least on an interim basis, if Sam Pittman's fired. That will be fascinating after everything that happened there a decade ago with the motorcycle accident, getting fired, lying, and then getting fired by the former athletics director, Jeff Long there. I never thought I'd see the day where Bobby Petrino's even, talked about at Arkansas, let alone working back at Arkansas. But now we're very realistic chance, gentlemen, that he could be patrolling the sidelines as the head coach. And I'm listen, I'm not into that person reading the body language and all this stuff, but I'm going to go all conspiracy theory on you guys. All right.
Let's go.
All right. So Petrino, like the week before the season, put some darker color in his hair. He's been going white, right? I'm like, oh, that looks nice. Looks pretty natural and all that. He was calling plays on the sideline last year. He's moved up to the press box. He's as far away as he can be on game days from Sam Pittman and be in the same picture as that man.
I love
looks
this.
He looks like the mastermind up there with the strings. He's like, you guys handle that stuff on the field. My offense up here, baby, it's beautiful. We're scoring points at will. We're doing whatever we want. Taylor Green's in the top 10 in passer rating right now. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but we keep losing. But if you just let me go in there and tweak things a little bit, I bet we could win some games, guys. It's coming. We'll see. All right. All right. We will take another break here. We're going to finish up Heat Check. Again, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and then we're going to get into Billy Belichick losing to Central right after this on the College Football Insiders.
Sunday, you can count on CBS Sports getting down with a fantastic slate of games. But first, a little fun when we throw it back to celebrate 50 years of the NFL today. Count on Sunday with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
We are back on the College Football Insiders, continuing our Heat Check segment here. A little different, but SEC referees, what the heck is going on? I was at the Auburn OU game. I will tell you, I'm not one to always go, the officials were bad. Officials were terrible in that game throughout it. They missed calls. They made some real weird phantom calls, but they also missed one terrible call that would have erased a OU touchdown off the board, but instead they did not flag it. If you guys were watching the game, OU came out in an interesting formation, and wide receiver Isaiah Cignetti was coming off the field, it looked like, to be substituted. Now, Auburn wasn't covering him because they thought he was jogging to the sideline to be substituted. Well, it turns out it was some gamesmanship. He was staying in the game, and then they snapped the ball. went wide open down the sideline to the end zone. No one was around him. Touchdown OU. Well, the SEC comes out and releases a statement hours later saying pretty much, we screwed up. That should have been an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. It should have erased the touchdown off the board, and it should have backed OU up 15 yards. Now, this was a one-touchdown game. OU won 24-17. This was back and forth. Yes, I know OU had 9 sacks, but this was very much a ball game while that was all happening. Who knows what happens if they throw the flag like they're supposed to? This play, by the way, if you're an old college football head, looked a lot like the Lonesome Army end play. Go Google it. Go look it on YouTube. It's when I think they used to line up Billy over on the edge of the formation, way far out, kind of hiding him away, and he'd run upfield and get open for a pass back when passing was what is that in college football? So shame on you, SEC referees. What's interesting is in that statement says they will hold them accountable, and we're not commenting any further on that. I would assume at the very least they're going to be suspended for a game or two here.
It's a brutal beat for Auburn, especially when it's that close of a game. I also say, as someone who picked Auburn plus 6.5, brutal backdoor beat on that safety. So that was unfortunate. I'll say just one thing here. Like, yeah, Auburn fans that I talk to are very upset about this. They feel like they got one stolen from them. I understand that. There were a couple. That's not the only call that went their way that felt very questionable at best, but that's a direct one where it's points on the board. And so I understand being very upset about that. And Brandon, you were there, so I don't want to steal maybe some of your talking points. But when I watched that game, I thought a lot of the concerns that people had about Jackson Arnold coming into the season played out. And again, I think I've made this point in the show in the past, but people were confused maybe that they decided to go all in on Jackson Arnold given some of the other options out there. And so between Arnold struggling at times, the offensive line not looking good, clearly getting worked by Oklahoma, it just felt like this is an Auburn team that's maybe not quite as good as we thought they were to this point. And losing this game, we've talked about so many people so far on this show on the hot seat. I think we kind of forgot that Hugh Freeze entered a pretty toasty seat heading into this year. And I just wonder at the end of the season, kind of this game might be the make or break one where all of a sudden they have 4 or 5 losses and somebody wants to make a move. So it has a chance to not only be impactful for Auburn in the short term, but also for Hugh Freeze in the long term.
Yeah, Auburn had about like a half dozen false starts in that game. The crowd noise was really get to them. And Jackson Arnold, OU players, 2 of them had to stop themselves, but they said they knew Jackson Arnold likes to hold on to the ball too long, and they knew they were going to be able to tee off on him. And he did that. I mean, he held on to the ball way too long in some of those plays. And then also he missed wide open receivers down the field several times, including 2 down the field to Cam Coleman, their speedster, that should have been touchdowns, guys. If you're going to be a great quarterback, you can't miss one of those, let alone 2 or 3 in a game. Yeah, everything that we've heard about Jackson Arnold proved true, and he should have had 2 interceptions in that game too on some quick slants that were in and out of the hands of OU defenders.
Yeah, just real quick, I empathize with Auburn fans. Like it sucks when a referee makes a mistake that changes the course of the game. I'm sure a lot of bettors out there are just as upset as John is about the 6.5. But at the end of the day, right? Like your offensive line gave up 10 sacks and 14 tackles for loss.
9. The NCAA changed it to 9.
Oh, well, it's 9 sacks. 9 sacks is still a lot.
Change the bumper stickers. It's only 9 now, not 10.
Yeah. And I will say Auburn spent a lot of money in the portal on offensive tackles. Got 2 4-star offensive tackles in the portal, returned 4 starters. They thought this unit would be a strength. And then
tackle
play the game that
safety by R. Mason Thomas. The right tackle got pushed.
That was one of those transfers. It was Mason Murphy.
Yes.
It was a 4-star transfer for them and coming from USC, and he just got literally run over. And like, if you invest there, you got to hit, and Auburn didn't hit the way it expected.
Yep. Simple as that. Auburn will be one to watch, as John mentioned. All right, let's get into how did we get here? Well, I was born in 1984. And okay. We're going to talk about college football still. Bill Belichick just isn't doing very well in Chapel Hill. Who could have ever predicted? Earlier in the week, he called UCF Central Central Florida, UCF decided to use that as ammunition. Head coach Scott Frost, who, by the way, played for Bill Belichick way back in the day. And they used that to absolutely demolish UNC 34-9. I knew UNC was probably not going to be all that good this year, but John, they're dreadful.
They're so bad. I mean, it's worse than I could have imagined. And it's funny. I remember, I forget who said it. It might have been Pat 40 or somebody, but I was at their first game. And I remember before the game, he's like, they're either going to look awesome or it's going to be a disaster. And that first drive, you're like, they're awesome. We're back, baby. And then they have just looked dreadful since then. There's not a lot of talent on the roster. We've talked about that. I think one of maybe the less discussed aspects of it is that this is not a well-regarded coaching staff. I had someone before the season, let me pull up this quote. I've dug it out for this show. An ACC rival person told me, Bill Belichick is slowly assembling one of the worst staffs in America. And you look at their group, and that's strong, but I mean, they have one of the biggest staff pools in terms of money. But you look, it's 2 Belichick kids.
Wait, did they not get the friends and family discount, John? When they
didn't. They're all paying full fright. It's incredible. You got Mike Lombardi, who is the highest paid GM in America at $1.5 million. His son is on the roster. You've got guys like Garrick McGee, who's a former UAB head coach who's bounced around. It seems like if Freddie Kitchens is their offensive coordinator, people rolled their eyes to me when that hire was made. So I think when you look at, all right, there's a talent problem, but also it just feels like there is a coaching development, all these other things pumping up. I mean, I thought UCF was going to be the worst team in the Big 12, to be honest with you. And I was almost a little surprised, even as bad as UNC was to start, that UCF was still, I think, about a 7-point favorite. I was like, man, there's no way that they're – and then they more than blew them out. So it's terrible. I don't know that they're going to have more than 1 or 2 ACC wins at best. And when you think about the fact that you're paying Bill Belichick $10 million a year, double what you paid Mac Brown, you forced out a 72-year-old, in theory, to get younger. You hired a guy who's even older. And you have a team that's worse than they were a year ago. I mean, it's just wild. It's all of the buzz that I saw for their first game is slowly just, it's like a balloon just letting out the air.
Can y'all imagine the silent, at home with Miss Sally, just like the glee from Mac Brown watching this situation, given how he was forced out and the success he had at North Carolina comparatively to what Bill Belichick is? This is a disaster. This is.
Do we know
so
if Mac
bad.
still has his? Does Mac still have his house that was a mile away from campus?
I think I heard that he sold it. I think when I was in Chapel Hill, I thought that I heard that he sold it.
I thought he might be throwing big watch day parties and Bill Belichick's driving home after the games and going, that Mac Brown, that youngster.
I just want to say real quick, and I've texted with a couple of coaching staffs and staffers who've faced UNC already this season, and the takeaway from all of them is this roster just doesn't have the talent. It's not good. And I think when you hire Michael Lombardi, forgive me if I'm wrong, he's never been in college football before this year, correct?
I think he briefly was at the very beginning of his career, literally 40 years ago.
Well, 40 years is a long time in the transfer portal era, I'll tell you that. And North Carolina coming in the way they didn't have a big staff, was just basically Belichick and a couple front office people in Lombardi putting that roster together. They were so behind in the winter transfer portal window. And this roster, and this is something somebody pointed out to me, is almost built like a Big Ten team with the lack of speed it has. And they're playing in the ACC, which is a much different league. It's just a really questionable roster build. And I realize, I don't know if y'all ever listen to the press box and the Ringer, they have this thing called softest target in America. And I realize Bill Belichick is probably the softest target in America, where everybody feels like it's okay to dunk on him and his situation and his girlfriend and everything else. But at the end of the day, Bill Belichick is a football coach and considered one of the best roster constructors in NFL history. And the roster he constructed in 2025 just isn't good enough. It is not good. And North Carolina is going to struggle all year. And we haven't even talked about it, but Gio Lopez got carted out of the game, and he was somebody that could at least erase some things with his legs. And his status for the rest of the season is very much in question based on the amount of pain he was on that cart. This isn't going to get any better for North Carolina, most likely.
Dare I try to redefine Bill Belichick's legacy? Because he won a lot of games, won Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, but he was always labeled as a developer, right? The guy that would win and develop. But how much of it was just Tom Brady, and then he elevated everybody else around him on that offense. And all the
we've got a Belichick Brady legacy discussion on the college football insiders.
It's
like,
simple,
go.
It's just simple as this. His winning percentage with Tom Brady with the Patriots was 76.9%. Without him was 43.3%. And then for his career at all end of his NFL stops without a Tom Brady starting, 44.4%. Near the end of his Patriots tenure there, obviously everybody was just like, this guy's lost it. It's gone. He needs to get out of the NFL. What the hell made anybody think that he could go to Chapel Hill and then just go, I'm going to bring in a bunch of 3-stars and kind of lean into this whole thing where I'm a developer? I'm going to tell you right now, Bill Belichick was never a guy that developed players into superstars. That whole thing was Tom Brady elevating players around him. It's that freaking simple. It's that simple. I know it sounds like 30,000-foot view, blah, blah, blah. It's that. It's that. Bill Belichick was not the reason why the Patriots were so damn good year to year to year to year.
I think that I was thinking about this as you started going. It's like, who is more excited about how things are playing out? Is it Mac Brown or Tom Brady? Both of their legacies are probably on the way up because of this.
I will say, by the way, Judd, I want to point out, Tom Brady has helped Bill Belichick with recruiting at UNC.
Yeah,
like he called John Matir trying to get John Matir to North Carolina. So
but he's also helped Michigan out, and he's helped them out
also
quite
Michigan,
a bit more.
Right.
In the recruiting. I mean, listen, hey, speaking of Tom Brady, he's going to go play some flag football right overseas soon. Maybe Billy B can latch on to him once again and go coach him to a win.
Wait,
honestly,
do you think Tom has any eligibility left?
I think the thing that, like, I'll put my hand up. I honestly thought it would be better than this. I really did. And it's in part because I've watched a lot of ACC football. Some of the coaching decisions that happened in that league are just mind-boggling. And I just thought, all right, this guy has proven that he is an X's and O's savant. He could find little ways to get the edge. It has not played out. Again, I think the coaching staff was not very good. And again, it's interesting that some of the guys that I thought Belichick would take with him to UNC, Joe Judge turned down an opportunity to go with him to stay at UNC. Matt Patricia was telling people before this end of the season, like, I'm just waiting to see where Belichick ends up. I'll go there. He ends up going to Ohio State. That defense has been very good. Like, you just add some of those guys that might have helped. But I just seeing him on the sidelines, it's just sad. It's sad. It's like some of the legacy stuff we were talking about with these other guys. Like, I don't want to see. I'm a Jets fan. There's part of me that loves it, but there's also part of me that feels sad that one of these guys we consider the greatest NFL coach ever is going to end his career on a bad UNC team. It's kind of legacy defining in some ways.
Can you imagine Bill Belichick having a podcast?
Can imagine his girlfriend having a podcast.
Bill Belichick Welcome to the podcast. We're going to talk today about third downs. All right, let's move on.
Oh, by the way, last thing. I'm sorry, real quick. Somebody's got, like, North Carolina plays Clemson in 2 weeks. Somebody's got to win that game. That's all I'm going to say coming out of that. Like, somebody's going to get a win, whether it be Dabo Swinney or Bill Belichick.
Maybe Dabo and Bill Belichick can sit around a table and have a discussion and air it for an hour, unfiltered. How exciting! Indiana is smoking some cigs, baby. Curt Cignetti has got the Hoosiers rolling. I mean, why is anybody doubting them? I was doubting them a little bit. I still have them in the top 25, but guys, they didn't just beat Illinois, a top 10 team. They beat them down 63-10. This is an Indiana offense that's averaging over 300 yards rushing. And then you've got Fernando Mendoza, the transfer quarterback, going 21 of 23 with 5 touchdown passes. The guy hasn't thrown an interception all year. He's got 14 touchdown passes. And the defense sacked Luke Altmaier of Illinois 7 times. Is Indiana going to be in the playoff again?
I picked them to be preseason. I'm an Indiana believer. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about Mendoza enough. I won't take over this show talking about how much I love Mendoza, but he was great. And I got to say, like, I love Cignetti. He's kind of an interesting guy in person. I've spent a little bit of time around him. Like, he's a little awkward. He's got some Saban-like things in that regard, but I mean, his quotes after the game were hilarious. And, you know, I think, I don't know if I'm violating stuff, but Chris was mentioning how, you know, Cignetti could look good at other places in the future in one of our chats. I'm like, yeah, like if I were if I had a big job coming open, Cignetti would be the first guy that I would call, because all he cares about is winning. He's got a massive chip on his shoulder that's never going away, no matter how much he wins. And we know that the offense works.
Well, I'm sorry. Like Florida fans, I am sorry in advance. And Indiana fans, I am sorry too, right? Like your team just had an incredible victory over a top 10 team. I'm going to talk about your coach potentially being at Florida for a second. Like that Florida roster is ready to win. Like say what you want about Billy Napier and his staff. Like they have put together a roster that is not devoid of talent. And if you put Curt Cignetti in there, like with the way he calls plays, the way he runs an offense, like his general like ability to win no matter where he's been, like that looks pretty good. And I think those press conferences would hit like crack for Florida fans. There's going to be a lot of people in the mix for that job if it does indeed come open. But as John said, like Curt Cignetti should be at the top of the list if you're a P4 program looking to make an immediate difference.
Florida's recruiting classes have not been terrible. In fact, their most recent one was the best one yet. Number 7 in the country. A lot of talent. And then we saw this year, Cignetti, he uses the transfer portal, right? He used it first year, got a lot of players from smaller schools. James Madison, he took like a Moneyball approach. Did you have production? Are you a veteran? Do you fit what I do? Let's do it. And then also this year, he upped that, right? He was able to get better players out of the portal, some power conference type players, including Mendoza. Imagine what he could do at a place like Florida.
Yeah, and 2 quick things here. One, there's great alignment at Indiana. I think it's something we've talked about in the show in the past. He has a great relationship with the president of Indiana, great relationship with the AD. So that's something like they're going to fight to keep this guy. At a certain point, can he get more money in the SEC? Of course, but they're going to absolutely fight to keep him. And secondly, I wrote a story about him last week, but Bryant Haynes, their defensive coordinator, did a great job. That defense was flying around. They owned Illinois' offensive line. He has, he turned down some big jobs elsewhere in part to stay with Cignetti. I don't know if that's always going to be a package deal, but he's a guy who is an incredible defensive coordinator and is also going to be up for some head coaching jobs in the future.
Well, if Bob Chesney gets a job at somewhere else this cycle, I know who I would hire. Call first if I was James Madison. I'll put it that way.
And I think Chesney makes a lot of sense at Virginia Tech, potentially.
Yeah. Indiana's always criticized for their schedule, but can they win the Big Ten this year?
Based on what we saw, I mean, I think it's possible.
I think we're going to know a lot more when they have to go to Iowa and go to Oregon in back-to-back weeks over the next 2 weeks. I'll put it that way.
Yep. All right. We hit on Oklahoma quite a bit earlier, but is Oklahoma back, guys? The defense is dominant. The offense has been explosive. Can they contend in the SEC after the performances we've seen so far this year with 2 wins against top 25 teams in the month of September for only the 3rd time in program history?
I believe John Napier was still their leading rusher on Saturday, correct? I think that is my big hesitancy with Oklahoma. If that continues to happen, I just don't know how you hold up for an entire season. Looked great, though.
Yeah.
Their schedule is still very challenging. That to me is still, I'm more of a believer than I was before the week, but I still am skeptical of some things. And kind of like what Chris said about Indiana, I think there's some games coming up, including Texas, that I think we'll know a little bit more about this Oklahoma team.
Texas Tech, impressive on the road at Utah, especially in the second half. Baron Morton, the quarterback, goes down. They bring in backup Will Hammond. That guy's got some dog in him, man. He was 13 of 16 passing against a good Utah defense, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a gigantic double-digit win there in Salt Lake City. They alleviated all my concerns in that game, guys. I thought this was the one thing where I go, okay, now I'm on the money train here with the rich roster there at Texas Tech. I'm very much a believer in those Red Raiders.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I will say, like, money well spent, right? That defensive line, the starting 4, probably costs about $5 million, maybe a little bit more for Texas Tech. And they absolutely shut down what is a Utah offense. It's going to have multiple draft picks on the offensive line. Came into the week averaging over 6 yards per play. Utah didn't have a play over 10 yards until deep into the 4th quarter. They had been one of the most consistent chunk yardage teams in the country coming into the week. And I mean, Texas Tech defensive front controlled that game. And like, that is how you separate yourself as a contender. The best teams in college football have elite defensive lines and elite offensive lines. And Texas Tech, thanks to what it did in the portal, has that. They're not just a Big 12 contender. Like, if Texas Tech gets to the playoff and plays like this, they are a legitimate contender.
Nebraska. Everything was perfectly set up on the plate to me for them to finally get that win against a ranked team. Number 21, Michigan comes into Lincoln. Nebraska looks like they've got their best team they've had in a decade. They end up losing 30-27. 3 touchdowns for Nebraska, or excuse me, for Michigan, were just gigantic plays. I think it was 3 touchdowns. So I was looking at the research notes. 166 yards covered on those 3 touchdown plays. Nebraska now have lost 28 straight games against AP ranked teams. They haven't won one since 2016. I love Matt Rule, but let me tell you this about Matt Rule too. He's 0-18 against ranked teams at Baylor and Nebraska. He has not beaten a ranked team since he was at Temple. Matt Rule is 2-23 against ranked teams. Is Nebraska ever going to get off this schneid, or not ever, but will Nebraska get off that schneid this season? Will they be a ranked team this year?
Not
I'm
if
just
their
blown away
offensive
by
line
that
plays
stat.
like that.
Yeah,
That was-
I picked Nebraska to win, and they burned me, and I've fallen in this trap again. I'm not picking them again. Someone else can pick them.
I will say real quick, like transfer misses make a difference in college football in 2025. And Elijah Pritchett was one of the most expensive players in the transfer portal this offseason, going from Alabama to Nebraska. And Elijah Pritchett isn't even starting for Nebraska. And that Nebraska offensive line was just beat up all day on Saturday by Michigan's front. I think they gave up 8 sacks or 7 sacks, one of the two.
7 sacks, I believe. Yeah.
7 sacks. And if you're going to pay that much to improve that offensive line, like it has to be better. And it just wasn't. Like they couldn't run the ball consistently. Dylan Raiola was forced to make plays out of structure a lot, which he's good at, but not like an ideal situation for a quarterback. And if you're going to invest, you got to hit. That's going to be a common theme on this podcast all year. And Nebraska didn't hit. Speaking
of Alabama, Justice Haynes, a Michigan running back, has really led that offense for Michigan. As much as we pay attention to Bryce Underwood and the dynamic potential that he has there, Michigan can run the damn ball. And if they can continue to do what they did Saturday, and actually even in some other games earlier this year, even against OU, they broke off a 75-yard touchdown run in that game. They got something brewing there at Michigan. Michigan's a team that it's just going to get better week to week. And I think this is, didn't get really looked at a lot, but this was a big win for Michigan and their prospects the rest of the season. And by the way, Sharon Moore going to be back in the saddle as the full-time coach after being suspended for a couple of games here. So now they get back to normalcy on game days.
If Michigan splits, like I know that's not a playoff show, but if Michigan splits USC and Washington, they're going to probably finish 10-2 and make the playoff. So just keep in mind that schedule is very, very favorable for Michigan this year.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to close the show as we do every Sunday with one more thing. We leave you with one last thought. Chris Hummer, what do you got?
How about Vanderbilt? 70 points in a win over Georgia State. That is a Georgia State team they lost to last year. Vanderbilt is 4-0, and this Vanderbilt team, I think, is going to be more than just like a fun story the rest of the year. They're going to be, I'm not picking them to win the SEC or anything like that, but they are going to be spicy the rest of the year. They're going to be bowl eligible well before the start of November, and I think this is a Vanderbilt team that's going to make a lot of people's lives very difficult in SEC play.
That game against Bama in a couple weeks, it's going to be tasty.
In Tuscaloosa, revenge game for the Tide. Never thought I'd say that about the Tide.
Revenge over Vanderbilt. Yeah, it's wild. I'm going to go with September, Maryland. In case you guys aren't aware, since 2021, Maryland is 19-3 in games in September. They are just great in September. Now, that doesn't always extend to the other months of the season, as we have learned. But even if you go back past 2021, I mean, as Chris knows, they beat Texas back-to-back years in September. There's just something about Maryland that they are very good to start off the year, and they kind of tail off as things go on. But, we talked about their win over Wisconsin. Malik Washington's awesome. Their defense, again, was working Wisconsin's offensive line. Like Mike Locksley entered this year, I think, on the hot seat. I think there were some of us who thought, man, I don't know if he's going to find a way to survive. Mm-hmm. They're 4-0 right now, and it might be hard to find some more wins, but 6-7 wins feels possible for them right now. And if they can go to bowl game, they're going to be in a pretty good place.
Mike Locksley, huge Earth, Wind, and Fire fan.
That's a great reference.
I'm going to go with Mizzou's Ahmad Hardy. He leads the FBS in rushing, gentlemen. 600 yards. We've been talking about him on this show for the last week or two. Little dicey there against South Carolina at home in the winning side of Columbia, but he still had 22 carries, 138 yards. in that 29-20 win. Dare I say, he's the best running back in the country. If you haven't watched this guy, go look on YouTube. He plows through people, he carries people, and he's got speed. He is a lot of fun to watch. And when they start playing quote unquote bigger games on national television, people are going to be wondering, where the heck did this guy come from? I can't wait to see him go against some really, really good defenses down the stretch. All right,
I
guys.
just realized that it is actually the 21st of September today. So Loxley probably is bumping that song.
I'm going to tell you something real quick. I hate that song.
Whoa.
Because it's all over TikTok, you know, the all that stuff. And my wife, whenever she wants to irritate me, will start singing the chorus of that song in the house. I don't know what it is. It makes my blood boil. And so
that's the same thing I do to my wife with 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies. So
that's a great song.
Yeah. It's an elite song. My wife hates it.
Okay. All right. Before we get more earworms, let's end the show. Thank you so much for joining us on the College Football Insiders. It was a busy week. Guys, this slate on week 5, incredible. Loaded with amazing games. We'll be all over the country covering those. But before that, we will be back on the College Football Insiders Tuesday and Thursday to give you the latest intel from the ground at all these programs as they go into a big week 5. For Chris Hummer and John Talty, we will see you down the road.